Hey guys, this is Fatal Cubes here with the fourth Java programming tutorials, and this one's going to be about for loops, but let's start right off with the challenge from the last video. So for this challenge you had to make a new class. I called it challenge if statements, make a main method, and you only need one variable because this is your variable that you're checking to see how many digits it has. Now for the first if statement I used greater than 99 and less than 1000. So even though no number is going to be over 1000, I still added that in just because just be safe, So it has 3 digits if it's going to be greater than 99 and less than 1000. If it's not this, so if it's not greater than 99, then check if it's greater than 9. Because if it is greater than 9 and it's not greater than 99, then it has two digits. And finally, if it's neither of those, then you can just add in an else saying it's either 1 digit or negative, because it's less than 9. So that was a fairly simple challenge, but it could have been difficult if you didn't think it through. So let's go right into for loops. Go ahead and make a new class. I'm going to call mine for loops, and I'm going to show you guys 2 examples of for loops. But let's first go over what for loops are while I'm making the main method. For loops are a way to loop through a block of code multiple times. So for example, if you wanted to print out the same thing 10 times, instead of copying and pasting it 10 times, you could have one for loop to loop through it 10 times, and you'll see what I mean here. So let's go ahead and create a for loop. I'm just going to start typing and you guys follow along and I'll explain it all. So for int I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. Make sure you have the semicolons. You need one after this right here, this line right here. You need one after this statement here, but you don't need one after this. It'll actually give you issues if you put one here. And we're just going to print out a few things. We're going to say here, this statement will be printed 10 times, and you'll see how that works in a bit. You can also use this variable. If you guys didn't already realize, this variable is for you to use. So this variable that's being added to, if you didn't know, this plus plus is the same thing as saying I equals itself plus 1. Plus plus is a way of saying add 1, minus minus is a way of saying subtract 1. So you're creating this variable called I, you're set equal to 0, and then you're adding 1 to it each time. So this value, this should be printed out as 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way through 9. And then we're just going to have a blank line so the spacing looks nice. Now, to look at the syntax for a for loop, you have to declare, you don't have to declare a variable, but most of the time you do, and most of the time you call it I, unless it has some specific purpose like row or columns. You generally just use I. So you say int I equals 0, because this is what's called what's your counter variable. This is being added to each time, and so you're going to set that to 0, and then you're going to have a condition. So you're setting it to 0, then you're checking, is it less than 10? If it is less than 10, run this line of code. Once it gets greater than or equal to 10, then stop. The for loop's over, there's no more printing out. So that's why it only happens 10 times. And then you add 1 to I. So what's going to actually happen is it's going to, for the first time through, it's going to create I, set it to 0. Going to check if it's less than 10. If it is less than 10, it's going to run all this code in here. You can keep adding code as much as you want. And then the next thing it's going to do is add 1 to I after the code is finished running through. And then the next time through, after it adds 1 to I, it's going to check is it still less than 10. If it still is, it's going to run this code again. So if I were to run this by hitting F11, let's make this bigger. Okay, this statement will be printed 10 times. The value of I is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and as you see, it goes all the way down to 9. The spaces were because of that for loop, that print statement that was just empty, that creates an empty line. And there you go, it's been printed 10 times. You can make it as big as you want. You can make it go through 1,000 times, whatever. Now I'm going to show you one more different way that you can make a for loop. Well, sort of the same way, but has slightly different code. So you can create a variable. I'm just going to name it random num because it's just a random number in this case. Doesn't represent anything particular. We're going to equal it to 54. It's just a random number. Everything about this number is random. So we were to go 4 into I, and this time we're going to set it to equal to random num. So I is now going to start at 54, because why not? Then we're going to check if I is less than 1000. And then I is going to plus equal 17. Alright, so this is a different for loop, but it's still going to do the same thing. It's going to set I, the counter variable, equal to random num, so it's going to start at 54 instead of 0. It's then the statement it's going to check, is it less than 1000? And this plus equals is the same thing as saying I equals I plus 17. Okay? So this I equals I, it equals itself plus 17. That's the same thing as saying plus equals 17. You're going to see this a lot. So, you know, if I is 54, plus equals 17 is really I is now equal to 71. So we're going to do another print statement, and we're just going to say what the value of I is. So the value of I is plus I. Go ahead and run this, and if you see it, there you go. So after all these prints that we did above, you're going to see that it's going to continually print out, and we're going to see it loop through a lot of times. I'm not going to count all the times, but as you see, each time it's adding 17 to the number, and it's going to add 17 until it gets to 989, because what it said is, well, 989 plus 17 is over 1000, so we cannot run that code anymore. Anyway, that's a simple for loop for you guys, and I'm going to cut away to the challenge. This was a quick video. And for loops, you'll see how they're used in the future. They're used all the times. It's great for when you need to loop through code a certain number of times, when you know how many times. So, see you guys at the challenge. Hey guys, I'm back, and this is not the challenge, but I did forget to say 2 things about for loops that are extremely important for the challenge. So first of all, there's 2 words that you need to know: break and continue. Break being like that, and continue being like that. Anyways, so I'm going to show you how to use break and continue. Basically, you can use break to get out of the loop midway through, so you don't have to do all 10 times, and continue brings you to the top of the loop. So, for example, you could say up here, we'll just make a simple if statement. If I equals 5, continue. What this will do is, if when I gets to 5, instead of running this code, it's gonna hit this continue. Continue is basically gonna say don't continue on. Go right back to the top and go right to this I plus plus. So if you were to run it, if you were to run it, you'd see that 5 was skipped. It goes from right to 4, right to 6, from 4 to 6. The last thing you could do is, if I equals 5, do break. This is alright, drag that up. What this basically does is, when it gets to 5, break says exit out of the loop, don't continue on anymore. So it's not going to get this code ever again. Once it reaches this break, it's going outside to here and going on to the next thing. Continue just brings you to the top of the loop. It puts you like up here almost, and adds 1 more to I, but doesn't do any of this code here. That's extremely important for this, for the challenge. And so what is the challenge? The challenge is using for loops. You're going to have to go through all numbers 1 through 100 and print out all the prime numbers. So this is a bit tricky, and here's a tip. You can put for loops inside of for loops if you want to use that method. You may find out a way to do it without doing that, but if you were to use a for loop inside of a for loop, you'd have to say you cannot use I again. It'll give you an error, so just use J or something. Set it equal to whatever you want and do the same thing. J is less than 10 j++. And now you notice is this statement would be printed out this statement's going to be printed out 100 times, because think about what happens. You start the for loop, I is 0, I++, I goes through, it prints this out once. It then gets this for loop and has to hit this statement 10 times, and then it goes back to the beginning. Does this once, goes through here 10 times. So this is actually going to be printed out 100 times. If you guys didn't believe me, here it is. Exactly, this will be printed 100 times, because as you can tell, it has to print 10 times each time, if that makes any sense. Anyway, that's it for this tutorial. So if you have any questions about the prime numbers, it's a bit tricky. I can help you guys out if you comment and ask for help or whatever. So see you guys in the next video.